Welcome back to our podcast.
That specific knot you get in your stomach when you're standing in line for a sequel?
Oh, I know it well.
Yeah.
It's the sequel paradox.
Yeah, exactly. It's not just excitement. It's this very specific type of dread where you're hovering over the play button or you're holding your popcorn and you're just thinking, please, please don't ruin this for me.
Right, because you want more of the thing you loved, but the very act of making more of it often dilutes what made it special in the first place. You're terrified they're going to undo the happy ending or just rehash the exact same jokes.
Exactly. And with Zootopia, that anxiety was arguably at an all-time high. I mean, the 2016 film wasn't just a hit cartoon. It was a total cultural phenomenon.
It really was.
It made $1 billion, it won the Oscar, and it managed to be this buddy cop comedy that was also a really smart, genuinely sharp allegory for racial prejudice.
Yeah.
That is a terrifying bar to clear. So naturally, when Zootopia 2 was announced, a lot of people held their breath.
But, and here is the good news, right off the bat, we can all totally exhale. We've been combing through a big stack of reviews and articles for this deep dive, and specifically there's this glowing review from Manuel Sambento. And the consensus is that Zootopia 2 dispels those fears almost immediately. He actually describes it as having soul and purpose.
Soul and purpose. I love that description. It implies it's not just some, cash grab to sell more plush toys.
Precisely.
Yeah.
The headline here, and this is what we're going to unpack today, is that while the first movie was about individual bias, the whole "you're a fox, so you must be shifty" thing,
Right.
this sequel decides to graduate to something much more complex. It decides to tackle systemic erasure and historical revisionism.
Which is heavy lifting for a movie that also features a sloth running the DMV. But hey, that's why we love this stuff. So here is our mission for today's deep dive. We are going to unpack how a movie about talking animals tackles the heavy topic of how history gets rewritten. We're going to look at the controversy around the therapy speak in the film, and we are going to analyze the cultural significance of the new scene stealer, Gary the Snake.
And trust me, Gary is the absolute key to unlocking the deeper meaning of this entire film. But before we get to the reptiles, we need to set the stage a bit.
Yeah.
Where do we find our favorite fox and bunny when this movie actually starts?
Okay, so this was surprising to me. I think we all expected a huge time jump, but it's really only been a few weeks since the first movie ended. Judy Hopps and Nick Wilde are officially partners, flashing their badges, riding in the cruiser together. But it's not exactly paradise in Zootopia.
No, the honeymoon phase is definitely over, and I think that is a really smart writing choice. Instead of skipping ahead to them being this perfect, well-oiled machine, the movie lingers on the friction between them.
Yeah, because Judy is still all methodical optimism, and Nick is, well, Nick. He's pragmatic, he's cynical, and he cuts corners.
And the friction is bad enough that Chief Bogo, who is still the best character, by the way, actually orders them into mandatory couples therapy.
Which is just a hilarious premise for a cop movie.
It is funny, but it serves a very specific narrative function.
Right.
It forces them to stop focusing on the crime for a second and focus on how they relate to each other. And this is where we run into our first bit of friction in the reviews we looked at.
Right. Let's talk about Dr. Fuzby. She's the therapist, and she starts throwing around these very specific clinical terms. She tells Nick his behavior is a result of disconnected affection, and she tells Judy she has a bunny hero complex.
And this is where the article we pulled from. The Justicers raised a pretty interesting flag. They asked a tough question. Does using this kind of therapy speak in a Disney movie normalize mental health discussions, or does it trivialize them?
That's a super valid question. We see this on social media all the time now, right? People throwing around clinical terms like gaslighting or narcissist when they really just mean someone was being rude. Is the movie falling into that trap?
The critique from the Justice was that by reducing complex psychology to these catchy buzzwords, it might make people feel like they've heard it all before, or it treats therapy as just a convenient plot device.
Which is a fair point.
It is. However, looking at the other reviews, most people seem to think it provided a really good framework. It gave the characters an actual vocabulary to understand why they were clashing.
So instead of just bickering, they actually have to name the problem. Judy isn't just annoying. She has a hero complex where she needs to save everyone, which makes her super controlling. And Nick isn't just a jerk. He has disconnected affection, meaning he pushes people away before they can hurt him.
Exactly. It grounds their conflict in something real and tangible. But while they are dealing with their internal mess, the external world of Zootopia is about to get very complicated.
Let's jump into the case itself. The inciting incident is a manhunt for a character named Gary the Snake.
Right. And immediately the movie is playing with our expectations.
Hmm.
In the Western world, and definitely in Hollywood tropes, what is a snake?
A snake is a villain, it's biblical, it's the snake in the grass. Think The Jungle Book, think practically any horror movie ever. If it slithers, it's bad news.
Exactly. If you see scales and no legs, your brain is wired to expect a threat. But Gary, who is voiced by the incredible Ke Huy Quan, completely flips the script. He's a blue-scaled pit viper, which sounds terrifying, but personality-wise, he is soft-spoken, he's nervous, he's optimistic, he is genuinely just sweet.
I saw one review from the Mary Sue that mentioned he has this one little fang and is just trying to prove that reptiles aren't scary. But here's where it gets really interesting. We found this fascinating piece from Radii that points out something I totally missed at first glance. This character isn't just a random creative choice, it's a cultural bridge.
This was one of those real aha moments. The review points out that the movie is leaning into the Chinese zodiac. In that cultural context, the snake doesn't symbolize evil or deceit at all. It symbolizes wisdom, intuition, elegance, and renewal.
And the movie actually codes this visually, right? It's not just a happy coincidence.
Oh, it's very deliberate. Gary wears a red scarf. In Chinese culture, red is auspicious. It wards off bad luck. And there's this visual motif throughout the film of a snake coiled with a rabbit.
Which I just thought was a cute image of Gary and Judy working together.
It is, but in Eastern symbolism, that specific pairing actually represents good fortune. So zoom out for a second.
Right.
You have this massive Hollywood blockbuster releasing right around the year of the snake, and it is consciously moving away from the Western scary villain trope to embrace an Eastern interpretation of the animal.
That is so smart. It really reflects how global these creative spaces are becoming. They aren't just writing for one specific demographic anymore.
And it serves the story perfectly, because the whole point of the movie and this franchise really is about challenging what you think you know about a group of people. If the audience walks in thinking snakes are bad and the movie proves them wrong, the audience has just undergone the exact same arc as the characters.
It effectively weaponizes our own bias against us. I love that. But if Gary isn't the villain, we have a vacancy for the bad guy. And this is where we get to the Linksley family.
Enter Pobert Linksley, voiced by Andy Samberg. Now, casting Andy Samberg is a very specific choice. What do you think of when you hear his voice?
You think goofy, lovable, maybe a little chaotic. You think Brooklyn Nine-Nine. You definitely don't think criminal mastermind.
Right. He appears to be the awkward nice guy ally. He is tagging along with Judy and Gary, seemingly helping them uncover the truth about the reptiles.
But then the gut punch. We read a breakdown from Primetimer that details the betrayal, and it sounds absolutely brutal. Pobert isn't just a goofball. He betrays Judy and Gary to protect his family's legacy.
And this is where the movie shifts from the first film's theme of prejudice to this film's much bigger theme of historical revisionism. The core mystery revolves around these things called weather walls.
Okay, let's unpack this because this is the plot device that drives everything. The official history in Zootopia is that the Linksley family invented these weather walls, which are what allow all the different climates like Tundra Town and Sahara Square to exist side by side.
Correct. That is the story written in the history books. That's why the Linksleys are powerful and wealthy today. But the truth that Judy and Nick uncover is that the Linksleys didn't invent them. Agnes did.
And Agnes...
Agnes was Gary's great-grandmother.
Yeah.
And crucially, she was a reptile.
Wow. So the Linksleys just stole the patent.
They stole the patent, framed Agnes for a crime she didn't commit, and used that as a pretext to essentially erase reptiles from Zootopia's history altogether. And they didn't just erase them from the books. They physically built the new city on top of the old reptile neighborhoods.
That is surprisingly dark for a Disney movie. That's a literal erasure.
It really is. But as that review from Manuel Salbento noted, it's exploring the idea that utopias are often built on the margins of the silenced. The perfect city of Zootopia only exists because they buried the contribution and the actual homes of the reptiles.
It's a really powerful message. The first movie was about individual bias, a fox dealing with people thinking he's shifty. This movie is about systemic erasure. It's asking who wrote the history books in the first place.
Precisely. And the takeaway is that you cannot build a better future without going back and correcting the lies of the past. Pobert Linksley isn't a cackling villain who wants to blow up the moon. He's just a guy terrified of losing his family's status if the truth comes out. He's protecting a lie because that lie gives him power.
It really makes you rethink the nice guy trope entirely. Just because someone is polite doesn't mean they aren't benefiting from a broken system.
Exactly. And speaking of people trying to fit into systems, we have to talk about the visuals. Because the animators are doing some really subtle, satirical stuff with the background characters that ties right into this theme of identity.
You are talking with the zebra.
I am absolutely talking about the zebras.
Okay, for the listener who hasn't seen the trailer, the zebras are voiced by WWE superstars Roman Reigns and CM Punk, which is already amazing casting. They are these two buff police officers, but one of them isn't what he seems.
No. The visual storytelling here is subtle but brilliant. One is clearly a zebra. The other, if you look closely at the animation texture, is a horse who has painted stripes on himself to look like a zebra.
I laughed so hard when I read about that, but when you stop and think about it, why would a horse do that?
It's a commentary on conformity. In this world, maybe the zebras are a brand. To succeed, to fit in, to be part of the winning team, the horse feels the immense pressure to erase his own identity and mimic someone else.
It fits perfectly with the Pobert plotline, too. Everyone is trying to fit into a mold that society has created, even if it's a complete lie.
And the movie is just full of these little details. Did you catch the pop culture references mentioned in the reviews?
Oh, there are tons. The Pandalorian on the streaming service, Jurassic Park, and apparently a very specific homage to The Shining.
Yes, which proves the creators are just having a blast expanding this universe.
Yeah.
But all of these gags and layers, the history, the psychology, the painted horses, they eventually lead us back to the heart of the film, which is Judy and Nick.
The core duo. We mentioned earlier that they start the movie totally out of sync. They are bickering, they are in therapy, but the movie isn't just about them solving the crime, it's about them learning how to actually be partners.
There is a great quote from one of the reviews that sums this up beautifully. True partnership doesn't mean agreeing on everything, but knowing when to trust the other's instinct.
And that trust totally pays off in the climax. We have to talk about the anti-venom scene because this feels like the moment where the therapy actually pays dividends.
This is the pivotal moment. Nick is fighting Poppert. It's totally chaotic. Nick gets his hands on the anti-venom pen that can save Judy. Now, usually in an action movie, the hero might use it on themselves or rush over to administer it directly. But Nick throws it.
He throws it to Gary DeSnake.
He trusts Gary, a character he didn't trust at all at the start of the movie, a character who is currently trembling with fear, to catch it and save Judy.
That's huge because Nick has disconnected affection, right? He doesn't rely on people.
Exactly. It is the ultimate act of surrendering control. Nick puts Judy's life entirely in someone else's hands because he trusts his partner's judgment about Gary. He overcomes his own bias and his own defense mechanisms in one single move.
It gives me chills just thinking about it. And it resolves that tension from the beginning of the movie so well. They aren't just flashing badges anymore. They are a real unit.
Which brings us to the question everyone is asking, the will they, won't they of it all. The internet has been debating this for a solid decade. Does Zootopia 2 give us an answer?
We guess and no, but mostly yes. There's this running joke about their team name. It starts as Hops and Wild putting Judy first. And by the end, Judy corrects it to Wild and Hop, showing that mutual respect.
But the real smoking gun, if you want to call it that, is in the post-credits detail mentioned in the Prime Timer recap.
The carrot pen. Judy accidentally triggers the audio recording, and we hear Nick's voice whispering, "Love you, partner."
And the reaction.
Judy doesn't fully address it. She gets a call, she flusters, she leaves the pen behind. It's totally ambiguous. Love you, partner could be platonic, deep friendship, or it could be a lot more.
It's definitely enough to keep the fan fiction writers busy for the next 5 years.
Oh, absolutely.
But I think leaving it ambiguous is really smart. It keeps the focus on the trust and the bond rather than just a typical romance plot. If they kiss, it becomes a rom-com. If they keep it here, it remains a story about deep, unshakable loyalty.
So what does this all mean? We've got historical revisionism, we've got cross-cultural snake symbolism, we've got painted horses and couples therapy. What's the final verdict?
The verdict is that Zootopia 2 is a necessary sequel. That's the exact phrase that keeps coming up across our sources. It refuses to offer easy answers. It suggests that just because you solved one crime or fixed one prejudice, the work isn't magically done.
I really liked the point made in The Justice about allyship. They drew a parallel to Black and Jewish allyship in the real world, noting that in the movie, the mammals and reptiles have to stand together because oppression of one group eventually hurts everyone.
Right. It's about survival. You can't just look out for your own species. If you let the lynxleys of the world erase the history of the reptiles, who is next? The rodents. the birds.
Exactly. It's a heavy message for a movie with a dancing tiger, but that's why we love it.
And before we wrap up, I want to leave you with one final thought. We talked about that post-credits scene with the pen. But there was something else in that scene that a lot of people missed, but our sources specifically pointed out.
The feather.
A single bird feather drifts down next to the pen.
Ooh. Okay, let's think about this for a second.
We just spent an entire movie learning about how the reptiles were erased from the ground right, buried into the city to build the weather walls. We know Zootopia is a mammal-centric city. We haven't seen many birds at all, have we?
We really haven't. I mean, where are the eagles? Where are the pigeons?
Exactly. If the reptiles were hiding in the earth, what uncomfortable truths might be hiding in the skies?
Whoa.
If there's a third installment, are we going to find out that the sky has been zoned off or erased, just like the underground was?
Yeah.
What is the actual history of the birds in this city?
That is a fascinating and honestly slightly terrifying thought. The verticality of the conspiracy, what is happening up there. I guess we'll have to wait for Zootopia 3 to find out.
Indeed. But it serves as a final reminder to look beyond the official narrative in our own world. Just because you don't see something doesn't mean it wasn't there before.
And on that note, we're going to sign off. Thanks for diving deep with us today. Go check out the movie, look for the painted horse, and ask yourself who wrote the history books you're reading.
See you next time.